Today's episode is brought to you by Makeover by Mimi. If you want to have full, luscious lashes without mascara, Mimi's lashes are what you need in your life. Head on over to Instagram.com/makeoverbymimi and mention Queens Connect to receive 10% off your first set.
Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? What's going on?
Thank you for tuning into Three Queens and Things, a space where Queens connect. Our podcast brings you the latest and greatest topics of self-love and womanhood. So, I'm Mimi Ford.
I'm Ahti.
And I'm Sola T.
And we are
Three Queens and Things.
And sorry, I'm tacky. Anyway.
Lord, we gonna shift that to
That's
get a little somber today.
Yeah, today's I think with anybody watching the news in the last month, I think we kind of keep life going, but we really wanted to take time to have an episode that talks about what's going on, because it's just a lot with, presidential things to natural catastrophes to, mass shootings and terrorist attacks. I think it's good that we take the time to honor those and their loved ones that have been impacted by these things, and honor our communities that are dealing with these things, as it's not easy to kind of on top of that deal with everyday life. So we're going to kick off our roundtable today with, just a check-in, just a very honest check-in. Like, how are y'all feeling with all that's been going on? Where y'all at?
Today is a lot better than I was yesterday, and I was the day before, and the day before.
Yeah.
However, this week has been, it's been a trying week. So it's still trying to wrap my head around everything and process it and trying to be positive every day. So
I would say the same. I'm kind of dealing with a lot of personal things, and then of course turning on the news and seeing the things that are going on in the world. It's just like I'm feeling very overwhelmed. This has been a very emotional week for me. I am just tired. I think I'm just feeling like emotionally drained. I'm just not in the best place, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely there with everybody. I know I mentioned this before, but depression is something that I battle with every day. In the last couple of months, it's just been in general hard. And I think when larger things happen, those can be a trigger for me. And so I've spent a lot of time kind of by myself and really just thinking about a lot of things, which hasn't been necessarily the best space. So, and I also had a guy that I went to middle school got stabbed this week. So that's been really, really hard to just kind of, even, when you haven't seen somebody or talked to somebody, just to know, like, I didn't think we were at the age where people just died all the time. And I feel like lately people just been gone, like, and I don't know what the best way is. So rest in peace to Daquan Thompson. I know that you are valued and you are missed, and that is a life that matters. Don't understand kind of the situation, and beyond that, I know there are other lives that have been lost in the communities, and that we just need to take a space to acknowledge and talk about how we feel. Like, it's hard to deal with things when so much is going on. And I think just thinking about that Marvin Gaye song, "What's Going On," that song has been replaying in my head. Because it really makes you stop and think, like, what is going on? Like, I'm seeing the president shoot baskets,
paper towels,
like all these things, and it's just like, is this a serious
I watched
world
that video,
we're in?
And I'm like, they let him do this?
But it's like, that's where we are, and it's like, that's a scary space. I think that's where I've been. Like, we are in a very scary space for humanity. Absolutely. But then we have those other moments where, like, you see the beauty, but, like, sometimes the pain is just really hard to work through. So I think that's where I am for
kind of going back to a couple episodes ago. Like, you good? Like, no, we need to check on our people. Yeah. Like, I think I've been realizing more this past week. Life is really short. And I think that we just have a tendency to take people, I don't want to say for granted, but you just,
for granted.
Like you were saying, we're at a space now where you're just not thinking, like, I didn't know at this age I would be losing so many people or even thinking about losing people, and I just didn't think this was a worry I
At a
have.
rapid
And
pace.
when you're at a good, I don't know, I just felt like 20s is supposed to be happy, and like you ain't thinking about
The life as
Right.
a whole. And I think this is all a part of life. I think that's the part where we are not taught coping, and some of this is senseless. Like, I think we have to say that, but I don't think that we are prepared with tools to deal with the post trauma
right.
of whether it's killings in your neighborhood, killings in, down the street from your workplace. Like, Mandalay Bay, I can see that from my job.
I drive
And
past it
every day.
yeah.
Every day. And I know that we've mentioned it before, but we are a Las Vegas based podcast, and it was just a moment to see that it was so close that it took away some of that false sense of security.
I thought I was in a bad dream.
Yeah.
Like, Keyshawn woke me up like, babe, I'm sorry. Like, his first reaction to me was like, I'm sorry, but I gotta show you this. And he turned on the news, and then he showed me the video of the shooting, and I was like, tears just started rolling down my eyes. Like, I can't believe that this is really happening right now.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
So.
And I was battling a cold on Monday, but emotionally, I could not go to work. Like, it wasn't even necessarily, my sickness. It was, I'm not okay. Like, I'm trying to figure these things out. Like, even though I didn't lose anyone personally, it really, really, really impacted me. And then when I went to work, I ended up going later on that day, and everybody's like, oh, are you okay? You're okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm good, but I'm not good. And I can't believe that we're just so programmed to just go on with our daily lives. It's like, wait, like, I need a minute. Like, seriously, even though I'm here, I'm not here. And it's been rough.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is there can be so many reactions. Like, how do we create a space? Because some people are emotionally tied to these things, even though if it's not somebody that happened to you personally. And I don't think that that's fair to tell them all the time, like, you have to jump back in. But also, what is that balance of, well, we do have to run things. Like, in my daily job, I'm a recruiter. So on that day, I was trying to be as sensitive as possible to people who may not be in a space to come in and have an interview, who may not be in a space to have it. And I don't,
Put on
it's
their
just
best
such a hard
face.
thing to figure out what that balance is, because then I'm also dealing with different personalities at work that, like, I just need to keep going. And this touches me that when things like this happen, sadness is not my first emotion that I feel. I feel frustration first. And so even what are ways that people are engaging me, like, I just don't really want to talk to you right now, because I know that I'm upset with how we are handling ourselves as a world, as a nation, as a like that, and how we don't prepare ourselves to have these mental releases. And then we talk about mental illness, but it's like, well, we could have addressed some of this in lifetimes ago and today.
Absolutely.
So I think those are things that are really hard, is to find that balance when things like this happen, because do we get to take a day off? Do we take a week off? And I think where I work did a really good job about trying to get somebody. We actually not on that Monday, but I believe on that Tuesday or Wednesday we had a we have Optum, which is like an employee assistance program. So that's another thing that I would just kind of note, is see if you guys have some sort of EAP through your health insurance, because a lot of times you can have like 3 counseling sessions up for free, those type of things. So what my employer did is they brought somebody in that led group sessions and individual sessions. And I know everybody, I'm very privileged to work for the company that I work for in a lot of ways, in that they are concerned with the well-being of people to a certain extent. But I think those are the things that we have to prepare our community members for, because even if it wasn't somebody that you knew personally, these are all lives, and people have different connections to lives, and all of those connections are valid. So how do we continue to move forward and with the proper resources to help people cope when things like this happen? Because unfortunately, we are in a world where they are going to happen.
Think about the people that had to go back to work at Mandalay Bay after this happened.
Right.
And it's just like, I can't not go to work. I need my checks. But it's just like, and if they were there that night, if they were part of that situation, and then just be able to be told, like, oh, you got to be back at work, in a couple,
or the people that I have a friend, bless her heart and her boyfriend's heart, they let people in. They live very close to the Mandalay Bay, or the MGM kind of. So when people were running, there were people outside in their neighborhood just frantic, didn't know where to go. I couldn't imagine being like, this happened, and now where do I go for safety if I thought I was in a safe place? But they've allowed people to come in, but like, where are the resources for those people? Because now you're connected in a more direct way,
right?
And we're grateful for those who have extended themselves that way. But I really am concerned with the emotional and mental well-being post event, that I don't think that we always think about that in particular, like those who are working in the area, those type of those who may have taken helped people take shelter. It's one of those.
Let's speak about our city after this happened. So we collectively said we wanted to do something to help our community. Yeah. It was pretty difficult for us to find a blood bank that was still taking donations. We even wanted to go out and lend like some of the local hospitals assistance and give supplies to some of the first responders. Like there were just a lot of things that we wanted to do, but our city came out and showed out in the masses. There was a lot of organizations that had to turn away donations, unfortunately, but that just goes to show how much they received, that they couldn't even take in anything else. Yeah. So I'm very proud of our city for that.
Absolutely. I think that there are always ways that we can sustain help. I think that's one thing to remember through all of this is even, I know there was like, we want to make sure that people, thinking about people possibly not being able to catch flights scheduled or, just being out of their comfort and being able to provide that. But a lot of restaurants, like I know Grits Cafe, Jesse's Barbecue, like I was very proud to see a lot of small local businesses that may not be able to take that day and to close their establishment did what they needed to do to provide food and resources for those families. So as you said, like that's amazing to me. And I think it's even more amazing because I'm not from here. And so I've been disappointed with Las Vegas and the amount of resources and the amount of nonprofits that are here and how they're able to engage the company, because it's a lot smaller than what I come from and a place that I would say has probably more need. But one thing that really stood out to me is that we're a community. And I think that's the first time I really felt that since I've lived here, is because when people think of Vegas, they think of the Strip, they think of partying, they think of, everything but like a neighbor. And so I think it was just right. It took me aback to say, wow, like I am a part of a community, and that is something I value, and that's something that I felt that I've been missing. But this unfortunate event, it showed that people live here. This is not a town where just there are things. People live here. People care. I know the next day my coworker, she was in line at like Dunkin' Donuts or something, and the person behind, like in front of her, paid for her meal, her breakfast, and I was just like, and that, like, out of everything, I think we were all kind of numb, but she had mentioned like that brought her to tears because and all this, we're scared. We're like, I don't know what this is going to happen. What does this even mean? Like, is everybody okay? Like, we're in this space to be like, wow, we're everywhere. People who care are everywhere. And I think sometimes we can miss that being here and living here and part of this culture. Yeah.
I was telling them a story about how I find myself sometimes, I don't know if it's like just living in Vegas, but people are very disconnected. And I find myself being like that. My family's from back east. I'm from back east. I'm originally from New York. So, like, people smile and engage with people when you walk past them. And I think I've gotten into this. I've noticed more recently that I've gotten into a place where I just continue to go about my business and just not acknowledge people. And I hate that. I caught myself doing that the other day. So when I've been seeing like our city come together and like you said, like a community, it really made me feel like, okay, we're not so disconnected like how I feel on a daily basis going through my daily life. Like I feel so disconnected from everybody. Everybody's just going about their business, doing their thing. But for this to happen and everyone come together like this, I was just like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was amazing. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this. It's still overwhelming to me. So I'm just kind of dealing with it.
Yeah, I think that, one thing that's important to me, and I try to find these ways for myself, but I was researching different like coping things. Like when something happens like this on a large scale, as well as in a smaller scale, and in our individual communities, like what are things that we can do to cope? Because I think that when these things happen, we hear headlines and they're trying to describe the shooter or the suspect as whatever, whoever, and it don't even be seeming right. Like it don't even be right.
It's
like,
not right.
And so I think what is healthy for us is to come to spaces in which we can find some sort of peace or healing, I think is a better word. But it was very interesting because I know one person who by the name of Jonathan Smith, he led at least 30 people from the scene. So it sounds like from the details I was able to gather that he may have gone back to help people and continue to do so. And so there was this quote that I was reading in this article that really like from him that really stood out to me and has really been sitting with me. But he said, everyone's been using that word hero. I've been saying it since the whole time I got home. I'm not a hero. I think I just did what anybody would do. Was it smart? Probably not. But if someone else was in the shoes and they see me, I would want them to come back and at least help me. And I think that goes into the tie of like how we think about people and how we think about acts of kindness. Because so then I was like, well, let me look up the definition of a hero. Like what does that mean? And so the definition that I found was a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble quality. So by definition, I think we could all quantify him as a hero. But I understood what he was saying.
It's all about you're human. It's about being human, and you are my fellow man, and if I can help you, I'm going to help you.
Exactly.
You know, it's just basic. These things should be very, very basic, but they're not anymore because of race and political viewpoints and, you know, sex orientation. Like, we kind of separate each other. But
so it's like you have to go above and beyond, when I think what he said is somebody needed help. So I helped them. And
as I should.
That idea of being a hero, that can cause a lot of other things, because in terms of how he's coping with his experience, of now he's going to be blasted everywhere. And this man probably needs peace and healing of his own.
Absolutely.
And now he has all these different cameras in his face asking him what happened. And I think those are the moments where I wish we were I wish we were in a better space emotionally and mentally to understand that that is a lot to put on something. It's one thing to acknowledge somebody, but that man has gone through a lot. Yeah. And he did what we as humans need to do.
Right.
And I understand that quote it really stuck with me, because this always happens when these things happen. It's like, oh, there's a gray hair, and as I said, he needs to be acknowledged.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, he needs healing. And is this contributed to his healing? So I think I've just kind of been chewing on that, like, wow, like that's such an interesting dynamic that I don't think we take pause to be like, wow, well, this man did what we're supposed to do. Right? But yet we think that this is such a and I don't think that he probably thought he was doing something so courageous.
Right. Like, he probably was scared and said, come on, hell, but I'm doing what I feel like is right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's not to say that anybody that didn't do the right thing, but I think I think that if we're honest, when we take away those different filters that Mimi has brought up, the race and religion and all these different things, I think as humans, we generally want to help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that, because there's so many other messages that are told that to look out for yourself, put your self-preservation, all those different types of things.
First law of nature. I thought it was funny. You know, you kind of have to find. I'm goofy, so I have to find like a comedy in this whole thing. I was watching the news the following day, and people were showing up and donating waters and supplies and things, and the reporter, he was completely caught off guard. He tried to walk up to a lady. She was a sister. And, you know, try to interview her. She was like, no, I don't want to be on camera. And I thought that was so funny. It's like, dude, you should have prepared this interview before. But everybody doesn't want the spotlight. You know, everybody is not doing
it for
that recognition. Exactly. And it was just kind of funny to me. Like,
but that's the stage that we're taught that we're supposed to naturally assume that she just want to be on TV.
Right. And she did not. But while you were doing your research, I did a little research too. And it's kind of hard not to focus on the cause behind all this, which is the shooter. So I do wish that they would recognize the victims or acknowledge the victims a little more than they already have. Every story that I've been seeing has been about the shooter. And I was telling y'all prior to us coming to this session that they've called this man from a child of God to everything else, a quiet man who loved his country music and everything else, all the highlights of this man.
The supposed shooter.
And it's just like, it makes me mad. And this man, the numbers are, he killed 58 people and injured 500 people. And he's just a quiet man that's never had a parking ticket, that they can't understand why he did this. They're trying to find everything they can to lift this man up. And after all this,
it's called white privilege.
And I was asking y'all, and I was like, they're calling him everything except for what he is, and I think he's a terrorist. However, the Sola educated me on that and said that technically the definition of a terrorist.
Yeah, so I'm still torn between this, but I was very interested because it's something that I always like, well, that's a terrorist. Like,
Absolutely.
created terror in somebody. And so by definition, when I looked it up, there was a definition that kind of stood out to me that didn't exactly sit well with me, but made me think about why maybe they aren't calling him a terrorist. And so they're
not calling him a terrorist because he's a 60-something-year-old white man.
That is, I absolutely agree with that.
That's why he's not a terrorist.
But the other component of the definition that I was reading was saying that they had to have it had to be associated with some sort of political view or political stance. And so if they're saying at this point that there is not a reason why he did this because he's a white man, we're also not going to assume certain rationales behind. I have my own theory. So it's not to say I still, based off of the definition that I normally go by, which is to create terror in somebody and in a group of people, I do classify him as a terrorist.
Same thing happened with Dylan Roof. He went and shot up that church. He's a young white boy. I've never seen one story calling him a terrorist.
They stopped to get him at Burger King?
Yeah, on the way. Yeah.
And a bulletproof
And it's just
vest.
like the difference between these shooters and the San Bernardino, as these are all very unfortunate events and none of this should have ever happened. I'm just saying that they're putting these labels on other people that are not white, like the Pulse shooter, the San Bernardino shooter. They're not white men. Like, that's really the only difference between the acts that they did were very much with the same intent to kill as many people as they could. Terrorist acts. And they're not putting that label on them.
Absolutely.
But that is something that's not been sitting well with me about this whole situation. Like I said, I've been keeping up with the story, and every news story I find highlights this man in some way for injuring 500 people and out of those 500 people, killing 58 of them.
After the second day, or after the day after the shooting happened, I had to stop watching the news. Like, I was over the media and what they're trying to force upon us, including labeling this guy and saying he lived in a quiet community and retired community.
That don't mean he can't be a terrorist.
His brother with the interviews. I'm like, okay, I'm done. No more.
See, that made me, it's interesting you said that too, because while I was doing my research for this episode, I was just thinking, like, the media, they're putting all this fear in us, and they absolutely have. I mean, they always do.
Yeah.
But it just got me thinking, I feel like, personally, there's a lot that's not being told about this
Absolutely.
story.
There's a lot we'll never know about this.
Right. But then I was just thinking too, it just made me question. I wanted to ask y'all ladies, has this made you anxious since this happened, living in a city where this just happened a week ago? Have you found yourself being anxious when you go out doing day-to-day life things that you've been always doing? Yeah?
Absolutely. Even with what we just had, Life is Beautiful and iHeart Music Festival, like, different event, same situation could have happened. I was supposed to be in Atlanta this weekend at the A3C. Could have happened. So it has really, really heightened my anxiety. Like, I don't want to go to these things anymore, but I don't want to not live my life. Right. I don't want to live in fear. So you just try to figure it out and live life.
Move past
I don't know if I've been anxious. I think one thing that I've been more concerned with is our gun policy. So I think that out of all things has been more of getting my grandma the number so she can call her local person. And so, you call your House of Representatives to let them know, to find out when we're voting on different things, because this goes so far beyond the anxiety. I feel like is rooted in a lot of things about this situation that weren't exactly illegal, that bothered me in terms of how he had access to the things that he had access to that helped him, hurt this many people. So I think I don't have an anxiety of doing daily things, I would say, but I have an anxiety around our policies and our laws that allow people to be in spaces with certain access to things that I just don't think are necessary. And so that's something that I I've always kind of felt that way. Like I've never felt the need to have a gun. I've never, if there were to be one in my household, that would be okay. I do ever feel like I would personally purchase one? Probably not. But I understand why people feel that they do, and I do understand that those certain people should have rights. But I think those rights should be within means that are necessary or that are within a certain boundary for you to defend yourself, but not to cause an offense and harm to others. And so I think this has really had me in a space to really become more active and become more knowledgeable on gun policy. That's what I would say has been my biggest impact. Besides some emotional and other mental stuff, like that's my
takeaway from it.
Wait a minute, we can actually be up in here like this?
Right.
They said that you can go into a hotel and just have it on your hip and like it's visible, and they might ask you to like put it away, but they don't. It's not unlawful for you to go in there.
Exactly.
Right.
From what I've seen in my research, they said Nevada like prides themselves. Like our local officials think that this is dope. That we just have such open laws. People can just walk around and they really
Until we're reminded
encourage.
that we're a part of the world.
I do have guns in my household, legal guns, and I feel like having automatic weapons, several automatic weapons,
that's not okay.
I feel like that should have caused some sort of red flag. Like, how is this? Why? What? I feel like he should have been questioned.
There's no
reason why you have.
I feel
all
like
of
he
these
should have been
automatic
denied.
weapons.
Fuck a question.
And
Like you just don't need to have it.
In Nevada, there's no limit on how many firearms you can purchase.
That's crazy to me.
There's absolutely no limit. They don't have to. If you buy from what they call a private sales gunman, you don't have to register it. They don't have to do a background on you. You just pay and you walk out.
And that's the part that's so sad, that when these things happen, then mental health is used as an excuse. But why is there not some form of a mental health assessment when somebody purchases a gun?
There was. And that was like on a federal level. Obama put something in place in 2013 that made it harder for people with mental illnesses to purchase a firearm.
I think it should be harder for just everybody
But how do you determine the mental illness?
But like, how do you determine that?
Right.
Like, those are the things that are
I'm sure
interesting to
it
me.
was
Is that if we're going to use this as an excuse before, then where is the help? Where is the advocacy? Where's all of these other things prior to people being killed?
Well, in February, Donald Trump rolled that back, so that's kind of a thing in the past anyway. So, but it's just crazy.
Well, thanks, Donnie.
It's really crazy. But that just goes to show, when you have those local elections, go out and make sure you're educated on
not
the people.
only every 4 years.
No, go out and vote for your local officials, because on your day-to-day life, those people make the decisions that are going to affect you in your city and your community.
And maybe that's something that we can lead here, like as Three Queens, is like, maybe that's something we can raise awareness around and make sure that we are, lobbying for people to understand when things are happening. So that's going to be up there. I'll take that on just to research some things and be able to post them on our social media, so when things are coming, because that's important.
Awareness is important, because we don't really know.
Right.
I don't know when elections come up. I'll see the little billboards or posters every now and then, but where do I go vote?
Right. A lot of our local officials have coffee talk. So you can go and meet with them. They have like once a month or something. You can go and sit with them at like a Starbucks. They'll put it on like some sort of government website. And you can go sit with and just talk to them in like McDonald's or Starbucks and just ask them whatever questions you need to ask them.
Yeah, we need to look that up and post stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But that was my takeaway. That was my huge takeaway. Like, do I know why we have such open? They said Nevada's probably one of the most open states when it comes to gun laws. It's kind of just like whatever goes.
Like Texas, like, there's a few.
Even
Texas
just thinking
too.
about how the strip is structured, like I thought about after this time, I was like, it's crazy how I can just go in these buildings.
Yeah.
Like no surveillance, there's nothing I go through.
Oh, we being watched.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The second you said,
but like no active surveillance where I would know about it. Like I can come in there with any bag, I just drive my car there. And I never thought about that before this. Like I never thought about how, how free we've been. Like how open
are you free?
Like am I free? Like what type of freedom is this? But but I've never thought about that in this specific. Since I've lived here, I never thought that was odd that I got to do these things, or not. I never thought.
Will you be able to do these things?
And I'm okay if I'm not.
Right. Or was he able to do these things because he was a 64-year-old white male and he wasn't a black
nobody
male
gave him the side eye when he
Muslim
coming
male
upstairs
with the
right.
backpack and
or
a hoodie.
appeared to be Muslim male.
Right.
Because it's about perception.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So.
Yeah, well, I know, again, going back to the psychological, mental, and emotional wellness, I was looking up some ways that, maybe recommendations of how you can cope, because some people may just not know how to. Like, I think a lot of what I felt initially was numbness. Like, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't want to feel like I didn't want to create this pity party. So then I felt like it was I was a victim. Like, I didn't like. Right. I think a lot of that, figuring out the balance of it, but also still being impacted and still being a leader and an advocate. What does that mean? So I looked up the American Psychological Association, and they had some tips around just like when shootings happen, and either in a mass or in an individual level or a smaller scale. And so they had 6 tips for like kind of walking through the process of coping and healing. Number 1 was to talk about it, which I think is kind of what we open this platform to do. And number 2 was strive for balance. So that's the idea of when things like this happen, we become pessimistic. We become so anxious and so scared, but like still remembering that the guy in front of you at the coffee store can buy you breakfast. Like, there's good people here. And I think finding that balance, being around good, people. And I think I always have a thing about labeling good people and bad people, but just knowing that we're all here.
Right.
Also, number 3 was to turn it off and take a break. So it sounds like that's what Mimi did, is turn it down, because again, the media, I do believe we have responsibility as viewers in the media, but I also know that there are other factors that weigh, like dollars and the dollars that weigh on that type of industry. So be aware of that. Be aware that there are certain ways and that this story is being told to sit with you a certain way and to have you perceive your life and things around you to be a certain way. So I think that it is good to take a mental break and say, I'm going to cope with the feelings, and I'm not going to focus on what is being told to me, because the story changes. I know when I first, I was not in the house when this happened. And so it was a very interesting thing. Like, this guy drove up, my boyfriend and I were driving, he drove up to us and was like, it was kind of a weird moment. Like, I had my top down. Like, he kind of looked over in the car, and so I looked over back at him. And he was like,
she fancy?
Y'all play too much. And so he was like, I want y'all to be careful. Something happened at the strip. And it's like,
really random.
He was like, it's a lot of police up there, so like, be careful. And it was crazy because my boyfriend and I both stopped and were like we like, kind of, you know how when somebody say something to you and you're like,
that's weird.
Mind you, I've heard sirens going off probably for the past 30 minutes, and I'm just, because I live in Las Vegas and sirens and helicopters just happen. Like, I don't think about that. That's not alarming for me anymore. I've been desensitized to sirens. So then I'm starting to put all this together, and me and him are just looking at each other like, what's he talking about? Like, bro, tripping. And then he was like, wait a minute, let me look this up. So then we look it up, and he's like, oh, there's an active shooter on the loose, because the way the story was initially told made it seem like there was an active shooter, just that they didn't know where he was, what was going on.
License plate.
And there was like, I think there was like 20 people so you couldn't figure out. The story turned out to be so much different than what actually happened and how you would have initially perceived it as a local. So, but it was just crazy to know, like, wow, like, this man really, like, he stopped. And like, we had to check in, but it was a reminder to also be like, well, in the morning, because it was such a different story in the morning, as things are building, they're not able to report accurately.
Right.
So you always have to be aware that you're going to hear things that may not be true.
But the agenda, I feel like, is to always
But then there's the agenda on top of that. So that was just something that I think that also touches on. I'm so grateful for that man to tell us, be careful. But it was crazy how I even thought of like people just saying weird shit to me in Las Vegas. To be like, what is bruh over here? And it's so crazy
in today's world.
But it's like, you have to like be so thankful and grateful for those people, because sometimes this shit seems off. But he had a message, like, it was about to be my boyfriend's birthday, so like, you never know where I could have been like, hey, let's go over here to go do whatever. So I think about those things, and I think about how people care and how people express that, and how I need to be open to receiving some of that in this weird city, but to really be thankful. I'm thankful if that man is ever listening to this. I'm grateful for him, because we hurried up and did what we had to do and get back in the house. But luckily we were safe in that process. Number 4 was take care of yourself. So I think sometimes you don't want to be a victim, you don't want to make it seem about you, but like, you also, that's one of the things when we first looked up what was going on, we heard the video of the rounds going off in this automatic manner, and we were like, what?
Damn.
the fuck is
going on? Yeah.
And it's like, I wasn't there,
Mm.
but I heard it. You watched it on the news. That's something as humans we shouldn't.
I still never watched that video.
We're not.
I can't.
How to deal with things
that
like
will
that.
fuck me up. Like I really can't watch that.
It was like I've never because we have the privilege to be in the United States, and most of the time when we are at war, it is not in our backyards. That was like I can only imagine what people in these other countries go through because if this is triggering me like this, and this is somebody's everyday life of hearing this noise and not receiving the care and the understanding and the resources to be able to deal with what the hell is going on, like that was just a lot. So understanding it's a privilege, but take care of yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Number 5 is help others do something productive. So whether that's you going to volunteer, again, as we said, it's good to volunteer not only in response to something, but to be a part of your community. And then number 6 is if you've recently lost friends or family and these are other tragedies, remember grief is a long process. Give yourself time to experience your feelings and to recover. And I think that is so important because our world and our culture says get back to work, do everything. And sometimes you have to take a mental health day. And sometimes everybody isn't afforded the privilege to do so. So find those ways that you can. And I know that that's a kind of a hard thing to a request to have to somebody, but and I think maybe even better is if you can find ways for other people to. Right. So whether that's you have time that you can donate, a pedicure, a manicure, a space, take somebody's kids for a couple hours, whatever that is, we can do that for one another. Right. And so that is my Sola T's takeaway is. The American Psychological Association, has lots of ways that you are able to cope with different things. And I would, again, have you research if you do have health insurance and coverage, see if you have any EAP, employee assistance program that allows you to go see a counselor or a therapist. Usually you get your first 3 sessions for free, and then after that you just are responsible for your deductible. But, as I'm taking this journey with you all, please take as much care of yourself that you can. And I understand that some are more privileged to do so than others.
We're absolutely lending ourselves as a resource to those that need it. We are a listening ear, all 3 of us. If you need to bounce something off, just talk. If you're a part of it, I'm praying for you. If you just are having a hard time dealing with the emotions, I'm still praying for you. And we're here. If you have nobody else to talk to, get in our DMs. No, seriously.
We're trying to orchestrate. I think maybe this might be another good time for us to put together a hike or a yoga session or something like that. Just for us to go and breathe. And remember that we're human. Yes. We don't always respond appropriately, but we're human. And we have to help each other.
Absolutely.
Like you said, it's not about being a hero. It's about doing the right thing for mankind.
We're trying to do what we can, but definitely join the conversation, y'all. As usual, let us know what you think, your emotions around this. Where are you at this week? Like even with, we know a lot of our listeners don't live in Las Vegas, but are you affected by this? And just
people heard it.
Period. How are you feeling this week? We did a check-in. We need to see how our listeners are feeling. So write us on social media. You can find us on the 3 Queens and Things on Instagram, Facebook. We are going to be doing a Queen's Chat, our second Queen's Chat,
which is our live episode. Bring your cozy socks and your glass of wine or water. Okay.
We sold out a little bit at that last.
Just a little bit.
But it was fun. It was necessary. But yeah, that'll be coming up on the 19th. So we'll definitely post on our social media.
After my birthday.
Come talk to us, have some fun. But thank you again.
Much love, peace, and blessings onto you.
Absolutely.
In the coming days. I know it's not going to be easy, but we got each other.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to 3 Queens and Things. I'm Ahti.
I'm Mimi Ford.
I'm Sola T.
And once again, we're 3 Queens and Things.
Bye, y'all.